We'll call the meeting to order. It's 5:05. And we'll start. I don't think we have any guests except for him. So it's Hannah O'Connell.
That's correct.
And she's going to talk to us here in just a minute. We'll do the warrants first. And then I believe we have one other guest coming.
Yeah, she's going to come
5:30?
closer to 5:30, 5:45.
We have somebody opening the doors, don't we?
I don't play that. No, I see this. Okay. I'm slow, but I got it. I got it.
Okay. So then we could look at the minutes. Any questions or comments on those?
Actually, no, they're not out.
Yeah, I was going to say, I didn't
I was just thinking, I didn't remember them either, so I thought maybe I was just lost.
Sorry,
So
we
we
got
don't have to
bogged down.
comment on those?
No.
All right, so there's no approval of the minutes because we don't have them. All right, and then I guess we need a motion on the warrants.
I move we accept the warrants and payrolls as presented on the agenda.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And then shall we skip over to Hannah?
Sure.
All right.
Good evening. My name is Hannah O'Connell. I'm the Highway Utilities Superintendent from the Department of Public Works in the town of Brattleboro. And about a year ago, the town received a grant to perform a safety scoping study in front of in the area of Academy School on Western Avenue. The project limits are actually from the bridge near Melrose all the way out to Greenleaf Street, so it's a little bit longer. And the purpose of that study is to find out what we can do in that area to improve pedestrian safety. As we all know, it gets a lot of pedestrians with kids going to school, there's businesses in the area, the church, all the housing developments in that area. So it's pretty important for us to see what we can do to improve that. So earlier this year, we contracted with a company called RSG. They're out of White River Junction, and they have been working with us to do the scoping study. What I'm presenting tonight are the three concepts that they have come to us with. We had a public presentation of these on May something earlier this month at Academy School. We received quite a few good comments. We had a good turnout there, and so I thought it would be a good opportunity to present this to you. I'd like to make a disclaimer that this is really my engineering company's presentation, so I'm going to give you like the Cliff Notes version, and if there's questions you have that I can't answer, I'm happy to look into it. I'll try to answer what I can, and like to get some feedback on what you guys think of what we're looking at. So it's kind of just a project background. It's a VTRANS funded program. It's the same program that's funding our Union Hill intersection, and they're also giving us some money for the Main Street sidewalks, so it's a program we're pretty familiar with. Pardon me. This is our project schedule. As you can see, we're about halfway through the project. At this point, we're still collecting comments, trying to incorporate that into the project, and we're hoping by the end of October that we'll have a final report that we can submit to VTRANS for their approval. So what are we looking for with this project? We want to improve mobility, increase social interaction, reduce some of the parking demand and traffic congestion, and do some traffic calming in this area. One of the things we really have a long-term vision in Brattleboro is to have some more connectivity for our pedestrians, because there's kind of like isolated little islands in Brattleboro, but as a whole, the town's not very connected. So it'd be nice if we can start tying all of that together. So this is kind of a picture of the two types of bike facilities that we're going to be looking at in this project. The farther one is a traditional bike lane. See them all over the place, very common. And then this is called a Sharrow. It's kind of a new concept. It's relatively popular in certain areas, certainly new to Vermont, and basically it means that rather than having a dedicated bike lane, that bicycle traffic is incorporated right into the regular traffic, and people tend to drive slower. It's in some circles it's considered to be safer rather than having a bicycle off to the side where maybe you can, drivers looking ahead don't see bicyclists. If you have more confident bicyclists right in the road on slower areas.
Is this 2 lanes and the left lane is for the bike, or
No.
both lanes are for
That's
cars?
a parking lane?
This is a parking lane,
Oh, it's parking.
and
Alright.
the bicycle traffic in this scenario travels in the traffic lane. Like I said, it is popular in some parts of the country, maybe not in Vermont. This is actually for Maine. So we have 3 different concepts. One concept is that one of our primary goals is to actually narrow up Western Avenue. It's very wide, it's a long distance for anybody to cross, whether you're young or old or whatever. It's just too far of a distance. Some places it's 80 to 90 feet. That's definitely discouraged by any transportation engineer. So the first concept is to have bike lanes continuous for the entire distance of the limits of the project, and to try to bring the green space in from the outside of Western Avenue. And let me show you what I mean here. So here's an example of what Western Avenue currently looks like. And this is kind of an idea of what it could look like. As you can see, we've brought this area out. There's a narrow island in the middle. This shows the standard bike lanes. You know, looking at different surface treatments for the crosswalks to make them pop, make them stand out a little bit, catch motorists' eye. This is the area of 7-Eleven. As you can see, we get all kinds of complaints about this area. It's a particularly dangerous intersection because people cut through onto Greenleaf, do all kinds of crazy things. We'd like to make this a more defined area. Maybe look like this. Just would be more parallel parking in front of the, I don't know, like top tier baking is there and stuff. Narrow up this drive, this access right here. You can't see it from this picture, but they would be completely closing off the access to Greenleaf Street, and again, making this more of a defined space. The second alternative we have is...
So Hannah, those 2 shots you just showed us, that's the first alternative?
Yes.
Complete.
And so the first alternative is basically
Bringing it in. Yep.
And
We
the
could go
median in front of the church and in front of the academy.
Mm-hmm.
Can we go back one slide?
Yeah. The slide or the one for it?
Well, this is a great illustration of what it could look like and be a safe area for families, kids walking to school. The other one, if you go back one more, shows, I'm sorry, the one of the way it is presently.
That's,
right there, that one, thank you. That's like a no man's land crossing there. It is.
even in a car.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, all right, too.
Exceedingly hazardous, and there's no, there's cars zooming. It's a long way for little kids to walk, and because little kids aren't looking,
Right.
they're just walking, and cars are zooming in and out, and you can't see here. Crossing the street there is equally hazardous because once you get beyond the signs on the road, and there's no curb either. So it's, we have a lot of parents who walk, who won't let their kids walk, who
Because of
live right in that vicinity, and they drive them in every morning because they're just not going to let their kids walk through that area.
And Hannah, closing off Green, I'm as guilty as anybody else here, probably, or maybe more guilty because I have to go up that road, of getting out of that 7-Eleven parking lot right now. So if you close it off, then you're going to force everybody back out into, I don't know where you would be forcing them out, I guess this way.
Well, there will still be 2 accesses to the shopping plaza.
But
There'll
to
be
get
the
back
one-
up Greenleaf then, I'm going to have to come back out onto this road and try to make that turn. Which, that particular intersection is a long wait and really hard to make a left-hand turn, particularly. And then you got the post office on the other side coming out. I mean, that whole does this study look at all? Doesn't seem to really look at that corner. It stops right before that nasty corner.
Well, it does.
And a lot of us comment that that corner is pretty much to the point of needing a light. Not all the time, but at certain peak hours of the day.
Yeah. Hard to argue with
But
that.
it's a comment just to those of us who have to drive it, or walk it, or whatever.
Please don't suggest a traffic study.
What?
Don't
Can
suggest.
you go to the next slide that shows the,
And just kind of following up with what Jill said, because I hadn't thought about that, but the last section of sidewalk that's shown there, the last west, the end of it, that's the second opening to the 7-Eleven Plaza area.
That's correct.
And then there's nothing happens to the width of that intersection at the foot of Union Street, so it's still
There are some proposed modifications, but not
not in
a
this
whole
certain
lot.
scope.
No. Unfortunately,
It's also a
not.
bus stop. That's a middle school, high school pickup spot right at the end of that 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
And that's another concern.
Well, and it's funny because, I mean, it looks like everything is going to be fine from that point to the school, but for everybody that lives on the other side of that point, it's still a mess, because that, and this isn't anything you can do anything about it, I understand that, but a partial solution is a partial solution.
Well, maybe the town needs to step up. The select board.
Not today.
Wrong hat.
Okay.
Move on. So the second alternative is that rather than bringing the road in from the outside, is to have wider islands in the middle. This produces kind of basically a pedestrian refuge, gives you a place to stop, look both ways. It's just another thought. Again, it's going to be the continuous bike lanes. Here's a view of what's out there right now. And this is what it might look like.
So we're looking east
Correct.
towards South Street.
Correct.
So
Like
the fire
here's the fire
station's over
station
there.
in this area.
So there you're adding this,
So rather than narrowing it up from the outside in, you're putting a place for pedestrians to hang out there and make sure they're looking, everything's okay. This concept doesn't seem to be as well received from various entities. I know the West Brattleboro Association likes the idea of having some more green space in front of the church and then where South Street comes out. Emergency Services has some concerns about having raised islands due to the way their ladder truck is set up, and also just getting the fire trucks to any houses on the opposite side of the street. It really increases their emergency response time.
And the snow plows.
this looks harder to deal with in the winter too.
Yeah.
I know my guys would be much happier with a narrower street than. So anyway, that's the only.
And the Sharrows was marked on that other one, so the bike path is still looking like a bike path, but.
So the images that I've shown you show the bike path as a separate item. A different topic to consider is that if you have the bike path incorporated right into the lane, that you can narrow up Western Avenue even more. It's just a different concept, it's just a different idea. That's what their purpose is, to bring all kinds of ideas. Some may be crazy, some may be more practical, and for everybody to weigh in on it. And there was some people who had a lot of support for the Sharrows because they felt that since there's large stretches of Western Avenue that don't have a designated bike path, that maybe the Sharrow is a little bit more of a continuous idea, and that there isn't any reason that we couldn't just continue that decal with the bike and the chevrons and just continue it all the way into town, and it kind of makes it a little bit more of a continuous, more recognized type of pedestrian facility. It's just a thought.
It seems there would need to be a lot of education
Mhm.
with drivers? Because I've seen people try to do that, and I've seen drivers just like honk these people off the
Right
road.
out front, yeah.
And
Absolutely.
almost have an accident where the cyclist is saying, this is my right to be here, and the guy's like ready to drive him off the road.
Absolutely.
The other thing too is that I think the Sharrows walk works a lot better for adults,
Mhm.
but for little kids, my stomach is churning thinking about
Yeah.
an 8-year-old on a small bike knowing the right way to do it and then being visible enough to a truck. I mean, wow, things could go bad really fast.
Pretty
with that.
lively out there.
Well, and I think, one of the topics that they try to address that we've discussed at length with them is, what's the difference between someone who is commuting, they're a confident biker, and what their needs
Exactly.
are. Because there's people who ride their bike to work or downtown every single day, rainy, winter, whatever. I see people on their bicycles every day, as I'm sure you guys do. And then there's also, mom taking her 4-year-old and her 5-year-old out on whether they're on the sidewalks or the road, and then there's people walking to school who don't feel, or people riding who don't feel confident using a Sharrow. So there's many groups of people that, we have to try to address all of those and try to make, and it's a difficult area, it really, truly is, and unfortunately,
So
Well, it's a lot to ask to have 3 pathways for 3 different modes of transportation, walking, biking, and vehicles. I mean, that's hard to do.
As a driver right now in Brattleboro, I'm confused about where already where the bikers are supposed to be, that whole Putney Road thing, where the bike signs are all over.
Is it middle?
I'm completely flummoxed most of the time. I just hope I don't see a biker and have to worry about it. I just try to give a wide berth. And even today, coming down Western Ave, there was a biker who was off on the side in what I thought was a bike lane, but then there was a car parked over there. So I knew he was going to dive out, and I'm sitting there trying to plan whether I can get around him. Is he going to dive out? Is he going to respect the fact that he's in a bike lane, but now he doesn't have a bike lane? So then what am I supposed to do? Do I have the right of way? Does he have the right of way? But I'm bigger, so I'm going to give him the right of way so I don't kill him. I mean, but I dread this now as a mom teaching a kid to drive, too, in this town. I don't feel confident with my years of experience and now watching my son try to drive. So I don't know. The Sharrow thing worries me.
What would be the prohibition against making you've got the 5-foot wide ADA accessible lane, maybe a little wider, make it dual purpose pedestrian bicycle?
Right, that
Gives
seems
the
safer.
bicycles right out of the street.
the one
Especially
thing
at
is
school.
that does kind of put some people who are out walking.
Yeah, that's
At risk.
But that's what the law in Brattleboro is now, that you can drive on the sidewalk with your bike.
Right.
really.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what we were told when we, as parents, were told that we should encourage our kids to come to the.
Kids, I would say.
No, but
Last
that's
thing I would
that's
tell my daughter on a bike is to, ride in the bike lane. To me, that's an accident waiting to happen.
And this is the difficulty. The best place, for instance, on Maple Street Extension, before coming down to Guilford Street, it is not safe for kids to be anywhere except on the sidewalk there.
That's right.
But bike commuters like me, it's not safe for me to be biking up on that. So it's sort of like, and the question is, do bicyclists have to learn how to yield to pedestrians on a regular basis? As you'd like to be cruising along at 18 miles per hour so you can get to, if you're commuting, but the reality of it is, this happened to me today. There were 5 kids on bikes on the sidewalk coming up Guilford Street, because they were going to school, and I'm going this way, and they're not sure what to do, and I'm not sure what to do, so you just have to slow down, because
But wouldn't it be easier to untangle some bicycles than it would be a bicycle on a car?
as much as I hate to admit this,
Yeah.
I think it's safer to have bicyclists yield to pedestrians on sidewalks
I do too.
than it is to have cars yield to bicyclists in the road. I hate to say that, but the reality is that's going to be less unsafe than telling every bike that it should be in the road.
That landscape parkway character with that center line, does that continue? Or how long does that continue?
It continues into the vicinity of Academy School. After that, the road narrows up enough that it's not really practical.
And how wide is that?
To be honest,
Approximately.
This is a more of an idea.
Okay.
So this isn't really an engineering design.
Okay.
It's more of just like, here's what you could do.
So now it seems like we have we've had 3 deaths on Western Ave in the last 2 years, something like that. Is that where?
4.
4 deaths?
Yep.
4 deaths in 2 years. There's at least 6 accidents at the crosswalk in front of Academy School in the last couple of years that I know of, where a vehicle has stopped because kids are crossing after being stopped by the crossing guard, where a car has rammed into the rear end of the car that stopped. 2 of those resulted in rescue transporting someone. So they're not just fender benders, they're serious enough accidents. And
And one of those accidents, Andy, was involved, correct me if you understood this wrong, but what I got from the people that live close there is that the car stopped, the first car, and the second car thought that they could do the right-hand slide by because that car was stopped. And there was a kid about to cross and jumped back into the sidewalk because he saw the car coming. We're that serious of nearly killing a kid in front of Academy right now. And this is, I want to hear your third thing and continue to talk about it, but I guess my larger concern as a parent group, I've been at Academy School now for 9 years, or 7 years, what is it? 7, 8, 9 years, right? And we have talked about this constantly, and it's just getting worse, that we feel like there's, the people around there say they're waiting to hear the thud. I mean, it's that level of seriousness. We've put up those little, what are they called? Ballards. To me, as a driver, that's just more confusion. There's just more kids, more things to drive around, more. I don't feel comfortable with it myself. I don't feel. How long is this before it gets done? If we do anything, this is a study, and then it goes back to be approved.
Once we have a study, then we can apply for funding, and as we get funding, we can pick away at it. All of these proposals total up to be between $700,000 and $1 million.
And we're repaving no matter what on Western Ave in this section too, right? Right now.
That is correct.
So the repaving just relines, right? There's no.
There will be no other
rejiggering.
changes. No,
And no refuge
absolutely.
creations.
No. Unfortunately, it's a very tight budget. We only have $150,000 to pave 2 miles of road.
Which needs to be done too. I mean, I'm not belittling that. I remain concerned as a parent from that school that we are seriously endangering kids' lives, and that we as a town aren't addressing that in some way. And
Well,
I
think
love
we
the
are
idea that
addressing
we're
it
doing
by,
something.
we're doing our study. We're
Right, but
this
the
is
kids
the best way
crossed
for us
today.
to get.
we're addressing it, and I do want to give everyone who's responsible for that credit. However, I've been knocking on this door for more than 6 years. We've had parents go to the safety, once a month, Tuesday morning safety committee meetings. The net result of all that work, complaining, in all these meetings is we've met with the chairman of this board, the select board. We've met, Ron was there, Jim Kane was there. The net result is we got a couple of plastic bollards in the road. They stay up for
part of the year.
maximum half the school year, and we get the crosswalks painted instead of twice a year, or once a year, twice a year. That's not enough, especially if someone gets killed out there.
And
So,
I think the school
it's-
crossing guards don't feel comfortable
You
either.
talked about lighting. A crossing guard quit. That was my other point. A crossing guard quit recently because he felt unsafe as a crossing guard, like he was going to get killed. So we know it's dangerous. I don't tell parents that they should let their kids walk to school. There's a bicycle safety, a bicycle walk to school program.
Yeah, safe
Safe routes to school program. We don't participate because you can't in good conscience advocate or suggest to parents that kids should get to school on their own, on a bicycle or on foot. It's not dangerous. We have to prioritize and make this a kid-safe zone. It's the second largest school in the area. And the more dangerous the road becomes, the more vehicles come because parents
Right.
drive their kids. And
It's
the
like-
congestion is just getting worse and worse. It's not a long-range solution kind of thing. It's an immediate problem that has to be solved right away. It's going to be really very difficult meeting with sitting here after someone's gotten hurt discussing the solutions.
Can I just add, Hannah, you may not be aware of this, but I know a couple of years ago, maybe more than that, 3 years ago, or so, Green Street has that speed alert sign, flashing type thing. And it seemed like there was some grant money to be able to do something like that near the school. And I just can't recall whether Steve Barrett thought we would be able to access that or not. But those types of flashing speed lights, that might be at least a short-term fix to, kind of draw attention to the speed.
I can't speak to that particular issue. I know that right now, we just got our budget approved last night, and we're looking forward to purchasing a sign similar to the one at Green Street, and it's going to be mobile, so we can certainly,
You can try it in various places.
we're hoping to be able
That
to
sign
move
does
that around
help.
a lot.
What is the
Yeah,
cost
and
of one
it's
of
got a
those?
solar powered panel on it too.
The mobile unit that we're looking at is approximately $5,000.
5,000?
$5,000 on a
Correct.
possible $750,000 to $1 million project. It sounds like it might almost be more cost effective if you get a couple, 3 of those, and put them up and then just paint. And my thought is, looking at the initial layouts that you had, the speed reduction area is basically the school area. What if you were to extend the speed reduction area a quarter of a mile in each direction, past the Greenleaf intersection and up, maybe even as close as the Creamery Bridge, to try to abate the speeders? And that's basically what it is. Idiots going too fast.
Well,
And
and it's not
That's
just idiots, it's
distracted
people
by
that
the
don't
speed.
know. It's a state highway, and that
yeah,
we,
Coming up from Dover and
you don't know there's a school there. There's no way that you are aware of that. There's a small sign, Andy pointed out to the parent group, well, we have a sign on. The sign is like this big. I mean,
Well, there's 2 school zone signs that we got that were, one came from Canal Street when that was no longer a school, and the other one came from a Christian Heritage when that was no longer a
I
school.
don't want to lose the point that there used to be grant money. I
Yeah.
don't know if it was through the state or,
Because that's how we got ours.
Yeah.
That's how we got our sign.
so that would be something that we should look at.
We also met Hannah, Margaret, and Atkinson when she was chair, and myself, and Mark, you might have been there?
Probably.
And Molly Burke, because
Right.
she's up with the state. And we met with somebody from Burlington, I think, that works a lot with bike paths. There was some state grant money because of the bike
State
path.
streets, was it?
I don't know about that, but anyway, it was quite a while ago, 2 or 3 years ago. One of the things he said he'd get back to us with, and we didn't ever hear back from him again, was a light that we could just be draped across the top, so there would be a flashing yellow light across that crosswalk.
Suspension light?
Yep, it was draped somehow. It wasn't hugely expensive. I mean, we even said to Molly or whatever, said, find the money somewhere. I mean, I'm thinking like $5,000 or $10,000. And we said, we'll give it to the school board. We'll even look at that money if we need to. But we felt so strongly about it, we never heard back on that.
Similar to the one at the retreat.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm trying to think what they have.
There's
in
a
the
light,
retreat.
right?
Yes.
It just flashes.
Yeah,
Slows
Usually
people
they have
down.
a cop there 2 or 3 days a week, too.
I don't know, I think there is a light there.
But,
The retreat. I don't go down there.
well, the street narrows appreciably down by the retreat.
See, you drive by stuff every
I don't
day,
see
you
that
don't
light.
see it. There are some flashing lights down there.
Yeah,
But the
there is.
retreat has so much less space to cross than what Academy is. And retreat is mostly not elementary age kids.
I was just
So many
asking
fewer
if you were
cars.
thinking the same.
No, I know exactly, but
Like,
I'm thinking that would, if it's working there and it was necessary there, who paid for it there?
That is their light, they own it, they installed it, they pay for the electricity.
I mean, we can talk to them if we have to. I'm just real you probably had a third plan I think we were supposed to look at, or is it just?
Correct, I do have one more plan.
So we're gonna interrupt you because we're all concerned about all sorts of
Maybe
things.
this is the silver bullet.
Let's go ahead, stop
I
asking
think
questions.
the point of all that was that this is a plan, but there's no money to do it yet.
Yeah.
And
So
it's
a
long
nice
term.
plan, but it's not gonna,
And it's long
So there might
term.
be some short-term things that we could try to.
we still have to do short-term things until,
The good thing is that when V-Trans gives out the money to do the scoping studies, I know that this isn't the time frame that you guys are looking for, but they like to see these projects go from start to finish. So they're a little bit more eager to give somebody grant money to complete a project that they have basically started. So hopefully as we apply for funding for this, will be a higher priority than some other areas. Our chances for funding look better than other. And the other thing that's really important to note about this is, you know, like these are ideas. The price ranges that they gave us of whatever, whether they were $700,000 or $800,000 to $1 million, doesn't mean that we have to do it exactly the way, you know, we could go out and rather than installing islands that are curved and have flowers and they're beautiful, we might be able to go out and paint islands. And I know it's not quite the same thing, but maybe it's a more inexpensive solution to some of the problems. So some of these things we might be able to tackle with our own funding or with smaller changes than looking at $1 million.
The town built the one in front of the library when you come into town off the triangle. That one was
That's
added.
and they build it right on top of the paper.
That's right. That was added. That was a town
And that looks
DPW
nice.
project, as I recall.
That is correct.
And I don't know what the cost of that was, but it seems like it wouldn't be terribly expensive relative to the numbers you're throwing out.
Right. So the third alternative is one that hasn't been well received. It's basically a bike path
Move the road.
out behind people's property through the woods.
Oh, I like this.
It's a nice idea, but I think that the right-of-way acquisitions would probably make this a project that we would never, ever see.
That's all personal property in the black one.
Correct.
But then it still only addresses the bikes. It doesn't address the
Right.
Doesn't,
pedestrians getting across
Yeah.
and all of that.
correct.
Or slowing down the cars.
I like the idea of a bike path, but we need to worry about all of them, I guess.
And so these are kind of the costs that we're looking at.
Where's the bridge?
Three alternatives. On the first concept, they had discussed putting a pedestrian bridge just south of the bridge over Whetstone at Melrose. Because right now it's very narrow, it has no pedestrian accommodations, and so they're calling out about $120,000 bridge to put some pedestrians across there and keep them off the road. That's it.
So Hannah, what can we do to keep moving forward with something now? Say we wanted to investigate the lights. Who has to approve that? Where does that have to go? Or
It would have to come to the traffic safety committee.
In the thought that perhaps the school board were to buy 2 lights, hypothetically, we'd have to come to the traffic safety board to have them allow us to place them?
It would have to be approved by the town. I don't,
Would
to
you
be honest with
envision
you,
any, pushback on something like that?
I can't speak to that.
I just, okay. Can you envision pushback from Brattleboro on that?
Oh, I expect about everything, but
Yeah, there will be issues that we've never thought of, and many of them will be really good questions.
And-
But I think gradually we could do that.
is it just Brattleboro, or does it, because it's a state highway, does the state have to have any say in a traffic light like that? Well, it's not a light.
It's just
Or
an
light.
attention warning thing,
To be honest with you, I don't know the answer to that question.
So in traveling around to different communities, looking at how other communities make their roads near schools safe for kids, I've noticed that there's been a lot of changes in the last 20 years or so. So we have, and you can see one of those photos, just barely see, for example, a yellow sign that says school zone, and it flashes, it's programmed to flash a half hour before school begins or something like that until school, from like 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning, and then the same thing in the afternoon. It's a small sign. The one, like I said, was at Christian Heritage, one was at Canal Street School. And those came up to Academy. One is if you're coming east, one is if you're coming west. Most people don't notice them. In fact, Jill and I had this conversation. Jill didn't know it's there. I talked to most people, many people rather, and they don't know it's there. It just blends in. There's a lot of signs there that are very small. However, signs do work. The state-of-the-art signs now are LED lit, and they're very bright, and they strobe. You cannot miss it. So that's one thing. I don't know what they cost, but I'm thinking signs aren't $750,000.
Right.
There's something probably that could be purchased
More accessible.
in a school or town budget. Painting the crosswalks more frequently, painting them differently, and making them larger. I've seen block letters each letter is mammoth, and it's it'll say school zone. And we have very small letters that you can't notice, and they disappear fast because 13,000 cars a day or something travel Western Ave.
Really?
The paint seems to no longer last very long. But in other communities, it does seem to last, and they're huge letters. So one of the issues that I found in talking to people out there is they don't realize they're in a school zone if they don't have kids out there.
Right.
So through signage, we should be able to, without spending a ton of money, be able to alert every motorist who's on the road that you're in a school zone, slow down. Those kind of things should be affordable. And I hope that we're not in such a state that we can't afford to make Western Ave safe for 6, 7, 8-year-olds.
Now, I know that you were talking about we're going to be repaving. What about if we put, when they were redoing the bridges on the highway, those grooves so that when you drive over it,
Rumble strip.
not yet. Just you're not. It's not a speed bump. But if you have sections of those before you get to the school, you're redoing the pavement anyways. Putting some of those in on either side.
I can certainly mention it to the director. I know that we would probably receive an inordinate amount of noise complaints from those because it is a residential area.
If I throw out some anecdotal story, there are a couple of small towns to our north, not that far away, who have been known for their very aggressive speed control via the local constabulary, reinforcing it with the blinking sign. Now, I'm not sure if that reputation still holds, but let me tell you, driving through those two towns with the blinking speed signs, you slow down because of the sign and because of the enforcement for the speed limits that are posted by those signs. Perhaps a combination of the sign and a more vigorous and aggressive traffic and law enforcement within that zone may produce the desired results, beyond the borders of our town. It's just a thought.
One of the things that, when I first got elected to the select board, I tried to go to every committee meeting. I got up really early to go to the traffic safety meeting. It was a nice cold day, and came walking around the corner of the municipal center on my way to the traffic safety meeting and slipped on a patch of ice and bruised my bum. But anyway, I got there, and they were basically all the things we just mentioned. All the ideas, all the considerations, that's exactly what they were talking about. And trying to figure out which one to do and what could be afforded. And I think basically the committee decided to paint the stripes twice and buy one light fixture, and that was pretty much what the budget or the situation was going to allow. Am I running that correctly? Do you go to those meetings? Maybe I shouldn't do.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not sure exactly, which meeting.
Well, this was a year ago, and the end of that whole process was part of it was the decision to paint twice, and the other was to buy that one light device. But I remember the stroboscopic lights were mentioned and the rumble patches were mentioned. And there are problems with everything. I mean, that's part of the problem, and then everything costs money. So I don't really know what we can do other than a few of us go to the traffic safety meeting and the traffic safety committee meeting and try and convince them. And Andy, it would be great if you could come and articulate it as well as you just did.
But Andy, you said you have done.
Right, and all the things you've mentioned that I just mentioned here have been discussed at those meetings in which Steve Barrett. And then we had some committee from the state. We had like 30 people who walked it one morning. I think it was that The
Mark, that was what I was
details?
talking
That's the Safe Streets group, isn't it?
No, it was a mistake.
I think it's happened
New one
twice.
in our school
That was the one I was
2 weeks ago.
talking about.
And all those things have been on the table
Yeah.
A long time.
2 years at least. So,
So is it possible
but
for
I'd be happy to go again.
us at the school board to take any action?
Do we have a representative from the school board that attends those, that's on the committee?
Betsy Gentile is.
No, from the school board.
But from this school board.
Which committee?
Traffic safety. I mean, I think that's.
I've shown up there a couple of times, but more as a private citizen concerned about Upper Dummerston.
How would you get on the committee as a person to be on the committee?
Sure.
Yeah, you'd have to talk to Jan Anderson, the town manager secretary, about when a vacancy is up or adding on another committee member, potentially. Something.
But hypothetically, if the board came up, let's say that one of those big signs like is down at the retreat, the flashing light, cost even $10,000, hypothetically. Does the town have to pay for that? Can we be nice and say, look, this is so priority for us that we can find $10,000 somewhere and we can do that? Is someone going to kick me under the table at this point?
Petition has a. I would anyway.
Well, I mean, it's still the town's kids.
So
It's
that's
still
why the
town.
question is, what's the process of getting
Right.
something, anything
Something done. And this is where I feel like if everybody's been talking for such a long time and it hasn't been going forward, what can be done to move it forward? Is it illegal? Is it okay for us to even investigate? Does it make sense for the school board to say, okay, we form a committee of 2 or 3 of us and look up what these things cost, and we come back and we say this is what it cost, and then we look at paying for it ourselves if the town doesn't have the funds? We split it with the town, we make the town pay for it, we start to badger them. I don't understand the process.
I can follow up with the grant funding source for that flashing light that we got, if it's any help. Because we did work with Steve Barrett. We had a little ceremony. It was right after I became principal of Green Street. So I
Well,
can-
because Green
can look
Street's
into
changed over the few years too,
Yeah,
right?
it really did make a difference.
It made a huge difference.
Yeah, it
You
made a
close the
difference.
one side in the morning and
Yep.
make it all one way, and that just seems like it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
And to drop kids off at Green Street is almost,
We still have other issues, just of
But it
general
does-
crowding, but it has slowed the traffic down.
but it's
Quite a
still
bit.
almost, that whole road is still thinner, narrower than even the drop-off area at Academy.
It's narrower than the driveway.
That's what I'm talking about, the
Right.
circle
Yeah.
driveway part is
Well, I
still.
think that would be a good first step. And I think the second step would be for a couple of us to go to the next traffic safety committee and ask them, we want to explore a couple of options, what they're going to cost, what do we have to do, what regulations, what steps do we have to go through. I'm assuming that the committee would be the place to start with that, rather than you and Steve.
I thought this grant that pays for this engineering study would include some of those things, the state-of-the-art signage and so forth. And
Me too.
It does include it will include signage.
so what would,
Bringing signage into compliance with current federal standards.
so I mean, what I'd like to think we could get an idea for what are those things that are out there, and then come up with a plan as to whether it's going to be LED signs, wider, more noticeable crosswalks, and so forth, and then figure out how much that, come to agreement on what those things are going to be, then figure out what the cost is going to be, and then figure out between the county and the school department how we're going to do it.
So what I understand though, Andy, is there's like 2 things. This study is looking at a much wider, longer term project, and the second, what we're talking about is much more immediate. So
That's right.
I
And I don't see
think
that-
it's fine to put that out there for them to do that, and I expected that too. But I'd like us to still look ourselves right now for some sort of signage.
Well, that's what I'm saying, and but I don't have the expertise, and I don't think any of us here has the expertise on what those are, other than driving around, seeing what some community has. It'd be nice to talk to someone who does it for a living, who makes roads safe for schools. When they build a new school somewhere, that's part of the process.
So Hannah, can we come back to these folks that have been hired? Is the grant money already all spent? But can we go back to these guys and say, what's the immediate things that we can do and how much do they cost? and ask for that as part of this study?
I can throw that out there to them, and we do have a contract with them, you know, with a specific scope.
Is this their final report?
This is not their final report.
So they're taking feedback even as we speak, more or less?
That is correct.
Okay.
The other thing to keep in mind is that it's the whole section all the way up to the 7-Eleven that the scoping study is concerned with.
And I'm hoping even
We would
some-
love to have all that taken care of, but for right now, it's, you know, our interest is narrower. So what would be the next thing that we would do? I mean, what's our next step to move this?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking anybody.
We're still-
I don't know how to proceed other than.
Well, Andy just asked a very, I'm sorry, Ron.
Well, I would say you get some time at the Traffic Safety Committee and talk about these specific concerns.
That's been done.
Well, again, and then talk about, are there grants available? John's gonna check out the grant that got your speed alert system. And then report back and see what we're finding out. But you'd like to think that there's a possibility of some short-term solutions that would help before we get into the long term project. Yeah.
So I was going to say, I think there's the will to do something fairly immediate, but we don't know the best way to do that. And so we actually do have a question for you, which is, can we go to your consultant and say, what's the best thing we can do immediately because we're concerned about the sustained unsafe conditions for kids? And if they can give us the answer that Andy needs, which is, yeah, this is the best thing you should do in the interim, then we go and decide whether we're going to do that with a grant or split the cost with the town or pay for it ourselves. But I agree with you, Andy. I think we need to do something immediate because it's just gone on too long.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's parents that are not, letting their kids walk to school or ride their bikes, I mean, I know that's a bigger, longer-term problem, but you're right, it's just making it more unsafe because we have more parents driving.
Peter, the quote that I would leave with everybody to think of, when we first heard as parents about taking kids and urging them to ride bikes, one of my friends said, as I'm trying to figure out how to let my son ride because he's so excited about this when he heard about it from the school, my question in my head is, do I ride in front so that the car hits and kills me in front of my son? Or do I ride behind so I can watch my kid die? That's the level that the parents are thinking at when we're talking about trying to get kids biking into a family school. I guess I don't want to understate the gravity of the situation. And when I hear people that live in that immediate vicinity saying, we're just waiting for the thud, that should be a wake-up call. And we've got to do something.
So we're going to need to move on in the agenda. Did we come up with items to pursue?
So I guess,
Can we just get 2 people that'll go to the next traffic safety?
when are these?
When's the next meeting?
Do you have it on your
It's the 4th Tuesday of every month at 8:30 a.m. Select Board meeting room. I
3 weeks?
don't know what the
3
date
weeks from
is.
yesterday.
So, just a quick search, the Federal Highway Department, Highway Administration, because this is a highway, there's a lot of grants out there that they'll match local funds and work with schools. There's I just found 6 grants.
It's Tuesday the 24th.
So Jen volunteered to
8:30.
help with this.
This is
Who are the people that are going to that meeting?
Yeah.
When is it again? For sure.
The 24th, Tuesday the 24th. I'm happy to go, but it's
I'll
kind of
go.
redundant.
And,
Yeah, maybe my voice carrying more weight than standing.
Jill, I don't know if you're available.
Rocks.
I've got dentist for kids. Does it
What time is the meeting?
8:30.
8:30
Oh, we did, yeah.
And that's, in what
How long
room?
have they
is
left?
that?
Select Board meeting room. In the Select Board meeting room.
What's it called? Traffic safety.
Mhm. Traffic safety. Yeah.
Well, Mark and I'll go then.
Yeah, we'll go.
I'll try. Around.
If you can, let me know, and I won't.
John, before then, you'll have some information about that grant?
Yeah, I've already emailed Alice to find out. She wrote the grant.
So well, John already did his thing, so Jane doesn't have to write it down, but Mark and David are going to go to that meeting.
improvement bicycle.
And Jill will try.
Road safety issues.
I'll put it on my calendar too in case anybody,
$125.
So Hannah, thanks so much for being
Yeah,
here.
that's very good.
So it's
You got some comments. That's what we were looking for.
Yeah, thank Josie Berry.
It's Department of Transportation.
Yeah.
Actually, Andy, that was one of the other things we talked about as we drove into the school, just putting barrels.
So I'm going to keep us moving. That we have another presentation. Kira Sawyer Hardigan
Coming in by the churches.
Yeah.
has been our summer food coordinator. And I'm going to do a little background before I turn it over to Kira. And some of this we're going to present together. But as you know, we've given you, or I've given you updates on the universal breakfast throughout the year. And it's interesting that when you remember last summer where Cafe Services talked about universal breakfast and the numbers that they projected that at a 50% participation rate, it would cost you about $15,000. At a 90% participation rate, you'd have a surplus. You'd have a surplus of $4,000. Well, a lot has changed between those numbers, and we've been working just about every 6 weeks with a meeting with the principals, representatives from Cafe Services. They've been great to work with. Kira's been really helpful, and you know, one of the last things that we did was do the pilot breakfast, because what we've been working on is better, nutritious breakfast, and there is an implication to that. So the things that we've been looking at are menu revisions, the per meal pricing, and then we wanted to get updated financials. So what you have in front of you would be the financials. The first page, financial, the breakfast estimate. We'll spend a little bit more time on that, but the and I believe this was with a participation rate of about
50%.
50%. So we'd have a shortfall of $52,000. And the second page is the current menu. So the first page is an improved menu. The second page is the current menu, and it would be about an $18,000 shortfall at, again, 50%. And the interesting thing is, once you improve the quality of the food, the higher the participation rate does not drive the cost down. It actually increases the cost.
That's important.
Yeah, that's a
Because
big
the subsidy
difference.
is less than the additional cost of good food.
The good thing is, the third page is the revised menu.
Looking at.
Again, Andy, Jen, John, Kira, myself, others have been working with Cafe Services, and they've really put together a really nice menu here.
Bean burritos.
And we did not support the bean burrito on Wednesday because of 2 recommendations that we knew of, along with about 100 kids. So I'm going to turn it over to Kira, and we can talk about these things.
Perfect. Hi, thank you for having me. So as Ron said, it's based on the 50% participation. But the other thing too is it's based on the current year ratios for kids that are considered free, reduced, and paid participation in the breakfast program. So that does impact it some with what we get reimbursement for. And going forward, you know, that would also play a pretty significant part. One thing that's noted on the second page of your handout is that there are also a couple different programs out there that can help, I guess, offset some of these costs. And one of them that we're looking at in particular is the Provision 2, and that is through the federal government. There is information in your packet that can talk more extensively about Provision 2. But pretty much Provision 2 is you have a baseline year, and that baseline is where you are, kids are receiving free breakfast, but you're gathering up your percentages for the following 3 years, and the percentages are based on, you know, the percent of, you know, students that are considered free and reduced versus full pay, and then at the end of the baseline year that gets kind of locked into place. And is what would be used for the following 3 years. One of the challenges for provision too is that you have to stop collecting information about who qualifies for free and reduced breakfast, because it becomes open to anybody, and that can impact things, I believe, like Title I. So you just have to look at a different way of collecting that information. But that can help offset some of the costs too. One of the other things to mention is on the second page, on the bottom paragraph, it talks about how these estimates are based on the requirement that Cafe Services needs to offer all students a full cup of fruit, but students are only required to take a half cup of fruit in order for it to be considered a reimbursable meal. So if the majority of students take just a half cup versus a whole cup of fruit, there could be a $16,000 savings, but that can't be counted on because we don't know what kids will be taking for fruit. But that's another thing to think about. So these numbers could be a bit lower as well, but that's not anything that we can know about ahead of time. So going forward, we are hoping, well actually we are already starting to implement some of the new healthier breakfast choices and have been getting good feedback from students. And going forward next year, we want to continue to be integrating some of these new changes gradually over the course of the year and be providing a lot of education in the schools. We're hoping to be able to connect some of these new breakfast choices with the taste tests that are already occurring for the Harvest of the Month, and that also comes along with, there's often an education piece that goes along with that, as well as just getting the kids excited and sampling food ahead of time and kind of working on the build-up or the anticipation. And so what we've seen is when that does happen, the kids are much more excited to be eating the food. And that's been some concerns voiced from folks is, are the kids going to be liking the food that we end up implementing? So we're hoping that not this upcoming school year, but the following school year, we're hoping that we can be implementing universal breakfast in the 3 Brattleboro town schools.
So I think it's really important to emphasize the plan for this coming year is to make these modifications, introduce new breakfast items that are healthier with the education. Kids start saying, yeah, this is great, and then gradually improving the menu that way, and then plan in terms of the budget for the following year, because it's either going to be, with these numbers, $52,000, or it could be as little as $35,000, depending on
Or
what
if
we
the
see.
16,000 fruit,
Yeah.
it could be down to
Yeah.
18. Possibly.
But it's clearly not what we had last
Wait,
summer.
What was, how did you get to 35?
By taking, I took 18,000.
Yeah, take 18
Took a
to
few
52,
fruit
you
cups
get
away from kids.
Okay, that's what I wondered. So she said 16, so that's, but that's,
So 37,000.
so how were you
Well,
dropping it again?
No, that's, he was doing the same
So
thing.
we're not going to get to 18, Dave. The lowest
Oh,
we're
I
going to
see,
get
the
to is
34
35.
includes the 16 for the small fruit.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought we could get.
So-
I mean, I'm just focusing on the first page because we don't want to go back to the current menu.
Gotcha.
I
We
mean,
were
that
just
that was one of the big
double-calculating.
issues that the principals were looking at a 90%. If we just gave out food, the type of food that we're offering then, half of it or more would be in the trash.
Right.
And it would not support the concept of universal breakfast. And that's where Kira and Cafe and other people from Hunger Vermont and other advisors have really helped us kind of work through this. So thinking about the following budget, whether it's going to be $35,000, $37,000 to upgrade the budget to be able to offer universal breakfast, I mean, that's going to be something that we have to consider as we plan this. As opposed to what we heard last summer, that if you have 90% participation, it's no cost to you.
Right.
That's not what's happening, so.
And the other thing too is I have been really impressed by the school district. It's been amazing and lovely to see the principals and the superintendent come out and say, we want healthy and better food for our children. It will help them be better learners. So this new menu contains more protein, no high fructose corn syrup, no artificial ingredients. we really want to set our students up to be successful.
We need to call Michelle Obama, let her know what we're doing.
Well, we need to make a subsidy. Now, this is for the school year. The summer, could you say a little bit, or maybe both of you, because I'm not sure the whole town knows.
Yeah, we're actually going to go into two
What our
other
role is
areas.
in
We're going to talk a little bit about the summer program, and we're going to talk about the after-school meal program. Which one did you want to do first?
Well, we can jump into summer food if we're done with breakfast.
So again, we'll keep you posted, but I just wanted to make sure you knew the menu changes, the cost implications, and
I had one question.
Yep.
Healthy snacks and the grants that go into that cannot be combined with this in any way?
I haven't been involved in the healthy snack program, so I'm not sure exactly how
It's
that would.
different.
It's for like the 10 o'clock
Different.
graham crackers, orange juice.
Yeah.
But I know, but my question would be if there's any way to utilize any, do all three of the schools completely spend every bit of that grant money?
Yeah, we ran
The
out.
healthy snack, yes.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we ran out 3 weeks ago. actually.
Well, and then that's not the entire snack program, there's still a charge to parents,
Right.
right?
There's still
Yes,
a
that's for
suggested
donation.
donation coming in from parents.
Correct,
Right.
so parents contribute, and the grant pays for the additional amount, and then we spend it until it's gone.
And presumably that whatever volumes have already been looked at, I'm sure. And just if we're buying a whole bunch of fruit for one program, we're buying for another program, I didn't know whether we could save anything by combining it.
Cafe has been really helpful in working with us with the, what's the name of the group that Catherine Gillespie,
Food Connects.
Food Connects. And so they have been really helpful in terms of, maximizing cost efficiencies related to both the snack program that they contribute to, but also, the regular breakfast and meals. But it's not like we can say, well, there's an extra bunch of money that we can take from there into this. So I don't see that as a way to offset costs. It is helping with healthy snacks. And if you think about it, 8 years ago when kids were bringing Twinkies and ring things, and I wish we still not. They don't do that anymore, and they're eating all these healthy things that people said, "Oh, my kids aren't going to eat these," and they love these things.
So the snack is really popular.
And that's what's happening with the food menu. We're introducing some things, but you have to have some education, some taste testing, sampling. Now I can actually pronounce quinoa. Quinoa.
And the cereal is.
The grain, a super grain.
So all of these two are nut-free in terms of the level 4 allergies.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah,
In our
some
meeting,
soy
we talked
butter.
about
It's pretty amazing that you can avoid nuts and still have this
we have-
The menu looks fantastic.
Kids-
I'm hungry.
But you should note that the current menu per tray cost is $1.15, and the new menu is $1.50. So there's a cost associated with the benefits of the improved menu, which that's what we were really striving for. So let's talk about the summer. Were any other questions about this? But we'll keep you informed as we get further into this. And when we do sampling, special breakfast items, we'll invite people to come, board members to come and sample those.
Some more burritos.
But so summer program?
All right, so as most of you know, this will be my second year running the summer food program. We're gearing up. I actually just came from one of 2 summer food trainings that I was doing. We have 13 sites throughout Brattleboro and also doing a pilot site in Guilford that we're really excited about. The program will run starting June 22nd or 23rd. It's that first Monday after school gets out until August 23rd. We are doing a exciting event this year. We're doing a summer food kickoff event. So we're encouraging families to bring a picnic. We're going to be giving out free food to kids that come. a full free meal. We're going to be having live music. Ron will be speaking. We would love it if you could attend. It's June 21st from 11:30 to 1:30 at the Green Street School on the front lawn. It'll be a good time, and I hope that we can see many of you there. So we have a new site in Brattleboro. It's the library. We're really excited that they're able to get on board with providing lunch this summer to kids. And just excited to gear up for another great season.
Can you say a little bit about who these kids are, or how they qualify, or whether they have to qualify, and then where the money comes from?
They don't have to qualify because the kids in our area, over 50% of them receive free and reduced meals during the school year. We don't have to collect income requirements from kids. So any kid can show up and be fed. They don't need to be from this town. They don't need to be from the state. They can come from anywhere, and we will feed them 18 years of age and younger.
Okay, it's basically a summer lunch.
There's some sites do breakfast, some sites do lunch, some do have a snack, and we are excited that for the this coming summer, the Boys and Girls Club will actually be open for dinner 4 days a week through this program as well. The money comes from the USDA. We get reimbursed a set price for every meal that we serve. That covers the cost of food, but then there are a few additional costs, like paying for me to help coordinate the sites and the food service company and do the training and the monitoring and those pieces as well. And I think that based on what we learned last year, I think that we have learned things to help drive down the cost as well. And we're just excited for another great summer, and I know Cafe Services is implementing some of the healthier changes that we've been working on throughout the school year. They want to continue to implement some of those things this summer. So I think the food is going to just be great, and I hope that everybody knows about this program. So please help spread the word. I think it's so important to make sure everybody knows about this program.
There's two big elements that I see Kira having a really important impact on. The quality of the meals, which really we didn't control 2 years ago when another agency saw the program. And when Brattleboro Town took it over, Kira was really conscious of the types of meals that were being presented and working with Cafe to say, well, why are we doing this? Why can't we do this? And really, again, the same concept that we're doing with the breakfast, improving the breakfast meals. And then coordinating volunteers. I mean, it's a huge project with 13 sites, and there are some times where you just don't have volunteers. I know the central office took a week, and it was amazing. It was great to actually be there with the kids and kind of see what goes on and taste the food and make sure it really does taste good. But so that'll be another challenge. I know that's always the case. So I think we're really fortunate to have Kira working with us on this program as well. And then if we have questions on this, let's take those. But then there's the after-school program that, again, Kira has been really instrumental.
Just one more quick, and again, just to get the information out.
Sure.
Are you coordinated with the rec department for the summer programs for kids?
Absolutely. They are.
I thought so, but I just don't know the details.
Absolutely. They're one of the sites, and anybody can find out locations closest to them by texting 211. And then it'll ask you to put in your area code, and then you put in your area code, and it will send you information about where are the closest meal sites for you. So I think that's another important thing to let people know
We
about.
could read out PSA right now.
Yes, and you may have heard that Ron and I recorded a PSA, I believe it was last week, and it's being aired on...
So to get the most up-to-date information about where meals will be served this summer, please call 211, toll-free, visit vermont211.org, or text MEALSVT to 877-877.
Nice and catchy.
Thank you.
I heard it on the radio.
Excellent.
I want to add that we serve breakfast and lunch for summer school, and that's over 70 students. So
And snack, right?
we provide the snack through Title I, So this program provides breakfast and lunch. And for SCAMP also, which is another, I don't know, 15 kids.
Yeah. So last year we served just under 21,000 meals to kids.
Is this a summer program?
Yes.
And now we're going into the afternoon.
The after-school meal program. Yes. So, let's see. I'm also very excited about this program. It is I think a newer program that's starting to get some attention, and we're excited to hopefully be implementing that this coming fall. The 3 Brattleboro town schools are interested in participating, and then there's some other schools under Wyndham Southeast Supervisory Union that are also interested in potentially participating. This one actually, Cafe Services has said that they believe that if they prepare 25 meals a day, that this program will actually create a small amount of surplus that can be applied to the after-school meal program or the SNLP program for, other program supplies that you might need, like coolers or different things like that. So we are hoping that this program can run 4 days a week at the after-school programs. And through this program, you can do a snack after school or a meal after school. You just have to have 2 hours in between the meal and they call it a supper. But what it sounds like we've decided on is just doing the supper and actually doing it right after school. Because by then most kids, have had at least a couple hours of not eating, they're hungry, and we wanted to offer it after school so as not to interfere with dinner time, as the family time. So kids can end up leaving with a really good meal, and any kid that participates in the after-school meal program, we get reimbursed for at the full pay amount. So it's, I think, a great program, and from everything that I've heard from other people working to implement this program in the state, it breaks even or generates a small amount of money that can be brought back into the program.
So the approximate numbers on the second page, it looks like, for Oak Grove Academy and Green Street, we would think those are pretty solid numbers in terms of participation. Oak Grove, 35 to 40 students that would be
When the
available.
programs are running.
Yeah.
Academy would be 40. Green Street, 30 to 40. So each site would at least have the 25.
Well, and it just has to be 25, I think, between the
whole
3.
district, yeah.
And so, based on, if you add all those numbers together, I think that there is a very high likelihood that we will get to the 25, if not go a bit above it.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it can be given out to any kid that's participating in an after-school program.
And we're talking about some training at the beginning of the school year with the idea of implementing this, I think, like October 1st, as the after-school programs get started into the fall. So that was the time frame.
September 21st? October.
No, October 1st. Yeah. So we'd do some training in August, end of August, and then get people on board, so we're all set to go in October.
And it's,
Oh, sorry, John.
I was going to say, it's correct too that the kids don't have to take everything. They can just, yeah, family staff, we can just take it. They don't have, like
So
lunch,
there
they have
shouldn't
to
be
take
much
everything. Here they can just take what they choose.
And we've also included a sample menu of what we're looking at for that, so you can see what those choices could be.
Is there milk with this every time? Yeah.
Yes.
No.
And the other thing that I think is exciting about this program is I've heard many teachers say that they use some of their own money to help feed their students. And this would take that burden off of them. And I believe that the current snack program has maybe an 80-cent reimbursement rate. And I've heard from some teachers that it just isn't enough to get good food to the kids. So with this reimbursement rate, we can really work towards getting good food to kids. And it doesn't have to come out of teachers' pockets.
Kira, the last paragraph on the second page, the second sentence says, this program may also be used to feed children over weekends and week-long school vacations.
Yes.
So what does may mean?
You can do that if you'd like. We've talked a little bit about that, but our primary focus is, for the after-school meal program, but for the after-school program. But once we get that going, we do want to look at some of those other pieces because, just as summer is tough for kids to go without, their most reliable source of food.
I think it's a great idea, but it's certainly not in the budget that we have here, right? And if Cafe Services is doing this, it seems like the logistics for extending over a weekend or a school vacation, they seem to be substantial.
Yeah.
It sounds like a great idea. I just didn't know what it meant.
Where's that, Peter?
It's this sentence
The
right here.
second sentence of the last paragraph.
I thought that was just in
Oh, I
there
see.
so we were aware of what the legal
Oh, I see.
So
May
ramifications
fund,
could
yeah.
Yes, there are, I know that the local Rotary, that they sometimes will make and prepare meals and bring it out to different housing sites during week-long school vacations and some of those things. So there's been some talk about, this program could be used for that. We don't have any concrete plans for that, but it is the hope that anytime we can help our kids get access to healthy food when that might be lacking is, I think, a good thing to explore.
We can also use it for evening activities. So if there's an art night or a math night, you can have the
That's a good
healthy
point.
meals, and parents can be part of that. We get the reimbursement for the students, so it'll minimize our costs. Right now we're paying a substantial amount of money to provide food for those activities, and this would reduce that quite a bit. But it would again provide those meals or kind of family style type program.
That would be good.
Yeah.
So it looks like you would like a motion for this?
This is actually an
Requesting
SU
permission.
decision. So we're actually,
That was something Jim Kane had asked me to write up.
oh, okay, well, we could do that.
But
It's really the supervisory union that needs to approve this because it's not only Brattleboro, but Putney,
Right,
high school, bands, middle school. I mean, if you want to make a motion to endorse this, that would be great.
That's what I was thinking, when this becomes officially from our whole board, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, good idea.
So I'd entertain a motion for that. Peter?
So moved.
And Mark's got it.
Second.
The usual suspects.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
This is great.
Yeah,
Thanks.
so again, thanks, Kira, for the work you're doing.
my pleasure.
This is the first time we've met Kira, right?
I remember.
Yeah, so we'll have her come back every once in a while.
Yeah, invite her back off.
Yeah, bring food.
Bring food. Let's have some samples.
Her dad and Jim King grew up together.
Oh, really?
That's cool. I have to say that the taste test thing worked so well that this weekend we had to buy kale to go into somebody's garden.
You actually buy that stuff?
As a
They don't give it away?
plant to grow because she likes from the taste test.
That's
For the
wonderful.
third grade.
That's awesome.
So we're ready to go back to administrative
Yeah,
reports.
Thank you.
Start with you, John.
Start with me? I think I have 10 copies of these. I'll go this way first. I'll get one to Dave. Yeah, I think I have actually less.
I had a question on food, sorry, John, before we, not for cure, so. All the work that we've been doing as an elementary board and the elementary administrators, is that same sort of thing carried out throughout the district with, say, the middle school and the high school and their concern for nutritional quality and high food
Yeah, I mean,
what's it called that?
Chris Farrow, that you've seen his name in this
Yeah.
report, he's the guy that's been working with all of the schools on the improved menu. John Ayer, who is the manager at the high school, has now had supervisory responsibility for the elementary schools and the other cafe services schools in our district. So, yeah, and Kara is really funded through the SU. Some of her contracted services will come from Brattleboro town because she's worked so much on the universal breakfast issue. But you know, this topic is throughout the district, throughout the SU.
Sorry, John.
Okay, so here's the Green Street report for the month of May. Our free and reduced lunch numbers, they had dropped to 72%, they ticked back up, or they had dropped to 71, they ticked back up to 72%. You can see under the attendance, we had 148 students attend every day of April, and so on. So far, we have 9 students with perfect attendance for the whole year. A lot of these numbers stayed pretty steady. Average attendance 95%. That's pretty consistent with what we've had this year. One thing I did want to mention: the NEYT ACT Tour group. They have 12 students participating in that, and the last day for that is tomorrow. And then they're going to be performing for the school this Monday, June 9th, at a performance at 9 a.m. So that'll be a lot of fun. We did have one new kindergarten student come in, and one returned to 4th grade. A student moved to Keene, and a 1st grader left to move. They moved from Pennsylvania at the beginning of the year, now they're going back to Pennsylvania. The PTO meeting, I wasn't even at the last one. First one I would have missed this year. There was only 4 parents there. For some reason, I don't know why, there was hardly anyone at that. But we did have, last Friday, we had our lockdown drill for the month of May. And we were a little nervous about it because there were a lot of subs in the building, but it was, for various reasons, we had to postpone it till later in the month, and that was our last opportunity to have it. It actually went very well. Probably the best one we've had yet, so I was really pleased to see that. The whole process took 3 minutes, and there was only a couple of very minor things that weren't in order. So the staff's getting really used to these the protocols for the lockdown, so I feel really good about that, the building being secure and safe. But the big news down at the bottom, you see this first bullet, the Tulip Trot was just a fantastic event. We raised over $7,800. It was unbelievable. Wow. Just a great day. Ron was there running again. We were afraid it was going to rain. It was a little misty and foggy early, but then it worked out great. Last year they raised about $6,600. This year, $7,800. There were 301 runners. Just a fantastic day, an amazing event. I sent you guys a little video slideshow. You can catch some highlights from it. It was a great day. And then field trips. There's been a lot of field trips going on. The PTO has been able to help augment some of the costs of the field trips, which has been great. And another thing that we were able to do was Todd Roach came in and had 3 different drumming workshops with the kids. And last Friday we had a performance of that. The kids in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade performed for everybody at the school, and that was just a really great kind of short artist in residence work that we had from Todd. But it was really, really good and really well received. So again, there's a number of other events happening at the school, but it's hard to name them all right now. But the year is ending up really well. The weather has stayed comfortably cool for the most part, and so that really helps when the building's cool inside. Those old brick buildings, once they heat up, they hold the heat. So been grateful for that. And we have all of our staff hired, and people are feeling really good. Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
1 minute. 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 1 minute.
passing it down around, our clubs are all, our after-school programs have all finished up as of last week. We finished our last one up, actually that's technically not true, we finished our last one up on Tuesday. That would be yesterday, actually, that's a long week already.
It is.
It's only Wednesday, huh?
We had, I wasn't able to come to the board meeting last session because we have a PBIS team that's been very active, and we've since that time have met 2 more times and then had a half-day PD yesterday that we worked together, really rolling out PBIS for next year. Our staff meetings have been dedicated to PBIS in the last 2 have, and positive behavior intervention supports, which is about building positive behaviors in the school. So we've got a lot of momentum behind it. We're assigning some summer readings for the whole staff and some discussion groups. So it's been great. It's been a great process. A lot of work. Can't believe it's June and we're still like, this place. Today we had our final benchmark meeting with Brian Bittner, the literacy coach, and Paul Smith, who is our curriculum coordinator with Access, math coach as well. And Oak Grove is academically very strong. More so than that, I think I just want to say publicly how impressed I am with our teachers, and that they have come from this place of getting to know children so well academically and socially and emotionally, but really meeting them where they are and figuring out how to get them where they need to be. And doing that with what I've seen that shift in the last probably 4 years. Well, I've been there 4 years. I don't know what it's like for me, but the shift has really changed from like unintentional low expectations because of where our kids come from to high expectations of where they can go. And I just couldn't say enough about the quality education happening at Oak Grove with our teachers, with our staff, and how dedicated they are. So, although today was a long meeting, it was very much worth it to get to spend more time. Besides field trips and plays that we have coming up last end of year stuff, I want to put a plug in for our family picnic, which is this Friday. It's from 4:30 to 6:30.
This is the family/neighborhood picnic.
It is, everybody comes. It's pretty amazing. People we've never seen before, middle school kids. And I love
Buses
it.
from New Hampshire.
All my
Cousins,
family relatives come.
Tons of academy kids show up. I don't know where they come from.
After school movie.
We're coming up with a Little League field.
There's a bouncy house. I can see it from my head. But I encourage you all, if you could swing by, you're more than welcome. 4:30 to 6:30.
Friday. Gallery walks, cover stroll, yeah.
Oh yeah, it's everything. Sometimes they stop in and get a snack for them to go down there. But it's become our kind of event of the year. We do things pretty simple at Oak Grove, but this is the bouncy house, cotton candy,
Oh, that's where they're coming
cone,
from.
yeah, hot dogs, and then families do potluck style. So
Those are the ones that are blowing away.
I know, I was just thinking
Yeah,
that. They
I
would
was-
have blown
that?
away.
The bouncy house is a
No,
blowing
no,
away.
we're gonna have to.
Yeah, twice.
Well, if you put enough kids in it,
Kids,
it's way
yeah.
Yeah.
Jen, a quick question. The numbers, the students went from 137 to 134, and you had a couple of kids come back from Northfield last month, but how did that, the numbers don't
Don't matter.
match?
134 from 137 to 134 from last month.
Yeah.
That might be a typo because we haven't had anyone leave.
Okay.
Sue just put this together today.
I'll fix it.
I can say that we have probably almost a dozen kids whose families have told us they are going to leave this summer. Those aren't all confirmed, but
Okay.
those are almost all about finances and housing in Vermont and Vermont Yankee families that are leaving. So
They're leaving the area.
they live in the area. I'll double check with you, Dave, but I think that must be a typo.
So, you'd know if it had changed.
I would know if they improved, yeah. Keep going.
But that's about it for
The Academy report, I believe, it came out with the Green Street one.
Mhm.
Okay. So I won't go read that to you. Just on the last page, there's a listing of the events that are up and coming in next week. It's very busy next couple of weeks. I'll just highlight our enrollment has stayed steady. One student left to returned to his homeland a few days ago. And we've already enrolled several students for next year who are coming, who are Bratt residents who are coming to Bratttown School District from a private independent school. So I'll keep data on that, and in the fall we'll report out if we have kids who leave for independent schools or kids who come in. As you know, we've had 18 kids in the last 2 years come in from private independent schools. And we're expecting a similar number right now. Gotten calls from parents about enrolling their kids. And tomorrow is, at 6 o'clock, is the performance of our fourth and final drama production of the school year. And this one is entitled 13 Clocks. And that's at 6 o'clock in the music room. There'll be shows for students tomorrow and the day, and then again on Friday. So all Academy students will get to see that. And next Monday is our third attempt at County Fair Day. And all the events will happen, weather permitting, as they were intended, except for the New England Center for Circus Arts is not available. So after the second cancellation, they had to pull out because their school year for their students is ending. And so we have, I think, 2 bouncy houses in their place.
Secure them tight.
Yeah. So come on by.
Just keep ours, we'll just.
Yeah, right.
Sure. Come on by. That's 12:15 to about 2:15. We have Jen O'Neill will be in the dunk tank. We're safe. Hope it's warm.
Yeah.
Because the water's not. The water is
Right out of the hose.
hose. It's very cold.
50-something, yeah.
Yes, rather chilly. And you're all invited to Family Fun Night. That is this Thursday, the 12th, at 5:30. And of course, the graduation for all 3 schools is the 17th. That's Tuesday, and it's a staggered occurrence. We had our benchmark meetings. We are having a benchmark meeting. We did a little differently than some of the schools where we're larger, so every team, like the 3rd grade team, 4th grade team, and so forth, we meet with them separately. So we have seven benchmark meetings every month, 7 data meetings a month, 3 times a year, the benchmark meetings. And we've had, I think, 4 so far. We have the other 3 grades to go the rest of the week. So it's a really busy time for us. And we have 2 special ed openings. We're still searching. However, we have 1 candidate, and I didn't bring a resume in. I'm not sure how that's working now, where it's an SU.
We have been approving them in each board,
Okay.
so we would want to do a letter of intent, so you're not waiting another 2 weeks.
Okay.
Give us a little background.
Sure. Her name is Whitney Line. She actually grew up in Guilford, Vermont. Went to college in North Carolina, got her teaching degree in special education, and got hired by the school district in which she did her student teaching. And she wants to move back closer to home. And she's a great find. Has 2 years experience now. So she's a great find. And talking to her principal, they were very high on her, gave her a great recommendation. And I think she's going to be an outstanding young special educator in that district for many years old.
So maybe you could circulate a resume after the meeting.
Sure.
We should take action tonight on that, because even though there's special ed positions that are funded differently this coming year, we have had the local school district approve those new positions.
I'll entertain a motion on that one.
So,
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
And it's Whitney, and what's her last name again?
L-Y-N-D-E.
L-Y-N-D-E. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it?
That's it.
So I was two questions I had for all of you. I was trying to understand, I'm not sure if I understood this, Ron, you might, maybe, this provision 2, and it says, that was from the last thing, it says schools with high percentages of low income students, 75% or more in some cases, are able to use provision 2 for both breakfast and lunch without losing money. So we're not going to hit that, it looks like, if it's 75% is the threshold.
Well, it says as low as 60.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we're more.
Yeah.
we
So
are
we're
likely, we're
close.
likely to be eligible for that.
That's direct serve, yeah.
Isn't that direct though?
Well, it says some schools have opted to use it for just breakfast when the percentage is as low as 60%. So we're not going to be able to use it for breakfast and lunch.
We're
Just-
researching that to see how it might apply and offset some costs. We think we will be eligible, but I don't have an answer on it yet.
So I am understanding that it's a question.
Yeah.
What was it? What positions are left in the 3 schools to be hired yet? That was my question, Jenna.
Teaching positions, we have one at Academy President, one special educator.
One teacher position?
One
still?
teacher.
Which one?
Special educator.
That's the only one that's up.
That's the only one that at the present time.
We have 2 paraeducator positions. One is the WSDFCU Special Ed Intensive Service position, which we're interviewing tomorrow. Again, we've interviewed already. And then a behavior sport para, which we don't have interview scheduled because we don't have candidates at this point that we are considering. And then we have a long-term substitute position for kindergarten for Chelsea Wheeler, who's on maternity leave. And we are interviewing on Friday for that.
So 3 positions.
And we've gone through the kindergarten interview, this will be our 3rd time. We offered it and it didn't work out. So,
If everything stays as is, we're done. I know.
And the likelihood of that is...
There's usually an August surprise, it seems like, somehow, but you never know.
Excuse me,
I'm
John,
happy
do you
for you
have
about being
para positions?
those don't come before the board.
Well, I was
No,
just
you
curious in
mentioned
general.
paras,
You
but
mentioned
I was
before.
only going teaching, but we do have a para, full-time para and a half-time para positions that we're looking for.
I was just curious where we were.
There's a related question, I just thought this is, next Wednesday, the DSBA is doing the retreat, and I'm hoping we're going to talk about plans for next year, and I'm hoping that one of the things we'll do is try to quantify the cost of some of the mandates that come from Montpelier. And next year, all of these new people that we're hiring are going to cost us about $1,000 a piece. And I wonder, is it possible to give me within a few an estimate of how many new staff we're going to be hiring who would come into the retirement system, who we would be assessed that fee for?
That's a good question.
And then what our total staff number is.
Yeah, that's part of my report.
So that's.
I don't have those numbers, but, I mean, that's what we're looking at, the cost of the incentives versus what we're going to have to pay for new staff and kind of work that out. It doesn't go into effect until the following year.
Right. But we're meeting next week and making our plan for next year. So we're hoping to fight it all year long.
Yeah.
We can change it.
So I was going to do that under my
I was
report
going
now.
to say, is it your turn?
Yeah, so just to give you a little bit more of an update on the legislative implications, I did finally get a chance to review with Jim how the tax rate impacts your budget. So the lower educational rate that was projected at $1.01 at the beginning of the legislative session that he loaded your budget in with was reduced to 98 cents. And so your tax went from $1.68 to $1.65, so 3 cents less than what you had planned for with your budget. So that's good. The other aspect of this new legislation is what David said, the new employee retirement, every new staff for July 1, 2015, so the following year, is an additional $1,072 at this point. And then the idea is that there's an escalation that would be tied to the whole consumer price index and that NAPE indicator that they use to set the tax rate.
And that's for the rest of the entire time that person is employed with us every year that fee is assessed. It's not
And it goes up. So
if
I thought that
everything
was-
else doesn't go up, it won't. But When's less than that?
No, I thought it was in the law that like by 2016 it goes up instead of 1,072,
Yeah,
it goes
it will.
up.
It will.
So the person that you hire in 2015 every year is 1,072, or next year
Oh,
is the same level.
It'd probably go up 2%, 1.5%, that sort of thing. Whatever that index is. So the other element of that is the spending cap, which is right now calculated at 123%. So, you have a spending variable that if your budget exceeds 123% of the state number, you have to pay an additional penalty. So that'll be in effect for 2 years, this year and the next, FY16, and then in FY17 it goes to 121. So the penalty threshold gets lower, so it's more likely that districts will exceed that penalty. So the idea is to, it's an artificial way to keep your spending down.
What are we at now?
123. So, I don't know, we're below the cap.
So when you add in all those $1,000 things, it brings us a lot closer to
Yeah.
it. So that's good.
So, as we would project, we would be below the cap, and we don't know for the following year. For this coming budget year, we'll say. And I think that's an important element here to think about in terms of surpluses that we generate. We've been really fortunate to have decent surpluses that we've been able to apply to taxes. Next year, we have $200,000 in the reserve account. Jim's projection of 173 to 150,000 surplus this year would bring that to about 350 to 370,000 for a surplus that could apply to FY16 taxes. Jim and I talk a lot about some of the questions about spending surplus money and that sort of thing, and we're saying don't be spending any surplus money because you're going to kill yourself for next year's budget. So if we come up with $350,000 for next year to apply to offset taxes, we'll be in better shape than if we start spending any surplus this year.
Well, isn't that cumulative figure still below the recommended 5%?
Yeah, it is. But, so that's why, again, we don't want to go into that. And I know it's going to come up under the Energy Committee, but I understand you really didn't discuss the idea of the $11,000 for the shed. So when we get to that, I'll be talking about Jim's recommendation, and I've got a document here on that, to essentially build it into the project, pay for it in the project, and then any sort of excess would come from the academy maintenance budget, as opposed to taking $11,000 or $11,700 from this year's surplus. Develop it right into the budget.
We may not need, I think one of the things we did, well, it's coming up.
Yeah, it's coming up. So that's it for me. I've got a few other things as the agenda.
Well, then let's jump to the Energy Committee and just continue on that.
Yeah.
And talk about the shed.
So here's the document from Jim. Andy had outlined this last meeting, and this essentially is a recommendation to award a bid to the company that Andy had presented. It's a local contractor, Greg Clark. Then Andy, you've had some work done from Greg?
Yes, Greg most recently did the roof for the White House, or the modular,
Okay.
and was the low bidder did fine work.
So again, this kind of outlines that the cost of the shed, the recommendation for the award to Greg Clark Contracting, and the idea of the money coming from within the boiler project of $375,000, and then any excess would come from the approved maintenance funds to Academy School. Second page is Andy's information to Jim and I. Second and third page, and then some cost estimates. So we would recommend that you approve this contract, and I think there's some timeliness involved in terms of how he's scheduling it in.
Right, so, originally, we wanted to be prepared in the event that it would come out of this year's budget. And in the event to come out of this year's budget, the work would have to begin in this fiscal year. So, we wanted to, in the event that's the way we went, be prepared for that. But in either case, because those sheds are in a rather precarious position, I mean, the storage units are in a precarious position, when this boiler project begins, they're going to have to be removed from there immediately. So we need a shed built prior to that. So it is time sensitive.
And where's the shed going to be located?
It'll be, if you go down the driveway with the boilers on, with the kitchen on your right, the boiler room is there. If you go down that, right there are the two units right now. We're going to continue down that driveway, and when you make the right-hand turn, it'll be immediately on your left on the grass. There's already a shed there. It'll be next to that present shed.
Is that the shed that was just recently built?
The shed, I think, was perhaps 2 years old.
Is it going to be adjacent, or is it going to be, that one I'm thinking, is a breezeway in between so you can have, you know,
What are you going to do with the breezeway now?
you pile wood in there. So
Just wondering. Rocking chair. and all that.
rocking chair, you know, a glider on a hot summer night. Anyway.
So is there anything the Energy Committee wants to add to this before we vote on, well, get a motion and...
We won't be able to.
We don't know where that budget's going to go. We know we're going to save $20,000 on the building that's not going to be built, but there's a whole bunch of other variables there too. So
We're meeting next week at
well, we don't know yet. We don't-
10.
10.
Yeah.
No,
Oh, that
What?
changed again?
no. The latest email was that Adam can't make it, and we'll have to look for a day different than.
He can't make the day?
He was going to
can't
come
make the
that
time.
day at 10. Well, anyway, doesn't
Yeah.
matter. We're meeting with the engineers, and we're going to, we'll get that nailed down.
Okay.
So the two...
Well, you were there. So
Well,
we had
I
a
know.
long conversation about.
So the rolling of the budget into the Litman
All right.
seems like a good idea.
Yeah.
So it's no longer going to come out of, we're following Jim's recommendation. So can I have a motion for that?
So
Second?
Do you have any idea what the motion is?
she will by the time we're done.
To
But
award
it's
the
two,
bid
it's
to...
two-part, right? To accept the bid and to
bid.
use funds from
This year.
the.
Not this year.
Do we have to?
Does she have a copy of it?
Award.
It's got the bulleted
Yes.
information.
Do we need to move the? We don't need to move where the money comes from. Just
No.
No,
No, we
but
don't.
it's important for you to know
Right.
that it's,
Yeah.
you know.
But we award the bid to Greg Clark Contractor
Right.
in the amount of $11,700. Okay.
We have a second as well?
Yes.
Yep.
Mr. T.
Any discussion? And if he's a personal friend.
You could recuse yourself.
So I'm going to recuse myself because he actually built our house and was a close personal friend. So I'm not going to actually vote.
Did you mess it up?
No, I will say our house is lovely and I think it's a great idea.
That's okay.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
And just for the minutes, Jane, those two bulleted items, 1 and 2, would be helpful
To add,
yeah, in
In
terms
there?
of where
Okay.
the appropriation is coming from the village,
Oh,
the
okay.
project, and then the maintenance funds.
all right.
Thanks for that.
So we've done the action that's needed, the Energy Committee. Is there anything else you guys want to say about the Energy Committee? At this point, Kim wasn't there, just public knowledge.
We're on top of things. We're going to get to the bottom of this.
Yeah,
We're on top on our way to the bottom. We're on top and we're on our way to the bottom.
Yeah. What was that little 3-word thing that you came up with at the end of August?
I don't think we went on that one.
I don't think we need to go there, but
All right.
EES Policy Council was top on the committee reports, and I don't think we've met since we meet next week, so I don't have anything to say on that. Finance?
Finance Committee. We signed, we approved, we discussed 1% grant request for instructor.
We
We have a need. There's need for a psychologist because I think the current one we have is moving to Boston. Yeah, that's like leading into a punch. So Marissa's currently in the process of going through recruitment. And it was a very quick meeting.
Diversity?
Met today.
Yeah, my company meets every Wednesdays throughout, and so
This is ever
I
gonna
just can never, I'm never going to be able to make it.
So we'll take Ron's kind of.
3 items, did some follow-up with the Celebrating Diversity event and talk about some fundraising for next year related to that, private fundraising. A 1% proposal that Michaela Sims had presented that we'll be distributing to principals and to staff about integrating social curriculum into curriculum. And some reading assignments for the summer that we will be sharing with principals and staffs for their upcoming staff meetings next year. Those are the 3 main things.
Any other committee reports? No, right? Unfinished business? Is it new business and then unfinished business?
Yeah, that's usually what we have. So I would say, because we've got a lot on this agenda, we really need to talk a little bit about summer schedule because of, I talked to Harry Frank from the SBA, his availability, and then we have the food service contract that we need to approve. And then we were going to do an overview of action plans.
Okay, so there's no any unfinished business?
Yeah.
Okay, Dave?
Yeah, I wasn't here at the last meeting. I apologize. The select board still is in the middle of trying to hire a new town manager, and there were interviews at that time. I just wanted to say a couple of things about the conversation about the staff meetings. One was about the urgency of the question of equitable access to technology, and I think when we went to Green Street, I think Mark will confirm this. There was a lot of conversation, a lot of concern from the staff about them not having a lot of technology. And I asked them if will you all get the new MacBook every 3 years, right? And they said, no, we don't. And I for some reason I thought that all the schools did get that. And during the budget process, Andy was very articulate about explaining why it was really important for the staff to have those, and that the spreadsheets and the data that they used those to process, and it was really integral to their interventions and enrichment and all the guiding their instruction. And then we just got the 1% request for the data person at Academy, and it's just full of technology, Google Docs and templates and long-term data studies and school-wide data and data presentations and school-specific and inquiries using data and staff presentations and sheets and summary data for summative assessments. And we know that the Smarty Balanced assessments are on the Common Core assessments are on computers. So I was really surprised that, and I don't know, Jen, your staff didn't mention whether they had computers or not. We didn't think to ask if that makes you know about it, but it just struck me as a pretty significant inequity. And I understand that the schools, that there's a different culture in the schools. There are a lot of ways that they're very different, but in terms of opportunity and in terms of outcome, they can't be very different. And it seems like the opportunity that your staff has to use technology and to take advantage of all of these possibilities is not available to the rest of the staff. And I can't imagine that doesn't have an outcome, an effect on the outcome with students. So that was why I thought that was urgent to deal with. And what I meant by saying, by the suggestions I made, was not to direct you in terms of what to do or give you, advice or plan it for you, just to make it clear that I, for one, am prepared to support and provide resources to make that work, to make that happen, and make sure that all of our staff have access to the same resources. And I think similarly with inclusion, the Academy has 2 people on the staff to do that, and I don't believe other schools have that level of resource or that level of support, and I think it's important that be recognized as well.
So what you mean when you said 2 staff for inclusion?
You have Greg and, you had Shelby. You have 2 people that work in the program which help the teachers improve their capacity to work with those students and also support those students directly in the classroom and outside of the classroom. So, and I don't know that the other schools have that, but the staff expressed their perception was that they didn't have the support they needed to make that successful. So those were the two things, I think they're really important programs, important parts of what we do. And from the data we got, the information we got from the staff, that didn't seem equitable. So those are my concerns that I tried to articulate.
So those are things that we talked about last meeting, and I was
Yeah.
hoping that we'd
Yeah.
have the minutes to be able to use those to reflect on the answers, but
Great. So
things
let's
like-
wait, we'll wait for that.
Well, just a comment, a couple of comments. The behavior interventionists, I think, at Green Street, we have reported the difficulties that they've had this year with that. We have a new person in place. We have a new step program configuration, so I'm confident that that's going to be really solid. I think that's the same case at Oak Grove as well, so I don't see any issues there. The issue of more enrichment at Oak Grove in particular, I think Jen actually addressed that when she talked about the library media / enrichment person, knowing that the 1 day a week wasn't really enough for enrichment. So I think that's been budgeted. I think we discussed collecting data for the computers and technology, so it would actually have numbers as opposed to somebody's gut feeling.
Right, yeah, we talked about it in September.
And then the idea of different tier support, well, to find no tier support discussed for students, I think we discussed that quite a bit.
Yeah,
So-
actually, I did want to mention something about that too, because I believe from watching the TV, Andy mentioned that was a training that was focused on students that didn't get the concept. Remember the rookie training that we just
Yes.
did? Yeah. And my question to the people that were doing that didn't have anything to do with that. It was specific to what's the support that's available to the students that get it. And the response was that we reteach it to them too. And that struck me as inconsistent with differentiated instruction. It wasn't about what they were talking about that day. It was a specific question at the end of the meeting that I asked, how do you intervene with the kids that get it? Because they hadn't talked about it. And to me, an answer I would have rather heard is, well, we have those kids help the other kids, because that does deepen their understanding. Reteaching someone a concept that they get isn't necessarily going to do it. So that was the basis of that aspect at this point.
I just like there's a disconnect on that one.
I'm sorry?
I feel like there's a disconnect on either what the explanation was or the perception of what your question was. Because
A disconnect between Dave
what
and
you're
the teacher.
reporting and
Yeah,
what.
yeah.
So I don't know if they misinterpreted the question or what, but it just doesn't ring true to me or accurate. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's not, I'm sure it's not the last time we're going to talk about differentiation and the effects. That's fine.
And then I think we did talk, Dave, about putting in the differences of the school, and that was one of the things that we had mentioned, that there are some differences between each school and in the climates, but what is acceptable and already kind of wanting to be continued was part of what we would discuss in one of the community forums, and I added that line in,
Right.
and then that's what we sent out to update onto the website. Okay, so
And the other thing, I think I can save us some time later in the schedule too, because the other thing, Ron, you mentioned that the action planning was a lot of information, that was going to be a long-term thing. And my intention for getting it on the agenda was just to recognize the part of it, which is in our policies even more explicitly, but is in the old quality standards, and it's in the new ones, Andy, that commission you and worked out, and it's in the continuous improvement plan too, that school board members, parents, and other community members are supposed to be involved. So what I just wanted us to start thinking about, and we can work on it over the summer, how are we going to find community members and parents, and how are we going to be able to be involved in the action planning process?
Yeah, I think what we'd do tonight, since we're really kind of later, well, we'll get back to that, but I think what we'd like to do is just pass out some material and then think about how we look at this
That's
further.
great, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Could we just confirm the summer schedule, because Harry Frank from VSBA, he could meet with us second week in July, but it would be Friday the 18th. So I'd ask people to look at their calendars.
Can you remind me why we wanted, I remember we talked about having him come, and I'm not sure about what we wanted.
Well, goal setting, I think for the 360 review to kind of help facilitate that. Yeah, I think those are the two main things.
The 18th is good for me.
It's a Friday,
That works okay.
and it would be something like at 10 o'clock, we'd go from 10 to 2, we'd have lunch.
Yeah, it's fine.
You can't be there.
You can't do the 18th, Andy?
No.
I was
So
already
10
trying
to
to
2.
put it
What do
on
we
my
call
calendar.
this? Goal setting? Or?
Yeah.
Is it gonna be at
And it'd be
the
here?
Brattleboro Center again, or is it gonna be at one of our facilities?
What did we do it last year?
Well,
Which
we
one
had
is
it,
it here?
we had it at the Botec.
Oh, when he came
No, when
to
he
talk,
came, yeah,
when he
we
came
shared
to do
that
one of
meeting.
those for new members, it was at the Cusick meeting.
Yeah.
Which
So when
is,
he came with our board, it was either here or central
Yeah.
office.
it was the central office.
Andy
one time.
can't be here? Hold on. Don't we all have to be here? Wouldn't we want
Sometimes you
Andy
can't
to?
all be here, but
Well, what-
is
so
there
besides
another
Is there
day?
another
Is there
option?
another day that week?
When are you leaving, Andy? Rob?
I can do it next week, but
Does it involve sun?
not earlier.
I can't do it.
When can Harry come? What are our options?
Monday the 14th.
Is that an option with Harry?
I don't know. I have to check. Are
I
you
think-
available?
I mean, if I remember correctly, you didn't get a vacation last year, so we need to work around you.
I did. I thought these were typically in August, so it's really jam-packed for July with different things. But Monday the 14th, I can do it. I don't know if he's available.
I kind of feel like if we can get all of us and we can't get Harry, I'd rather have all of us
Yeah.
exclude one of us. Just a personal opinion. So can everybody else come on the 14th?
I can.
Yes,
can
Joe?
do it.
Yeah, I can on the 14th, if you want. Mark, I suppose.
Mark's being, was gonna be down there. I won't be
You
around.
have no idea.
I did talk to Mark yesterday about what was on his agenda, and we talked about the summer schedule. And my memory is that in the middle of July, he would hit some family outing, and I told him incorrectly that I thought that this would be
Maybe we
August.
should look to, well, actually, I'm gone in the middle of August.
I'm gone the first 2 weeks of August.
Yeah, that's what we're going to
All right, so here's the second date that he's available, August 20th, which would be
do. Wednesday.
not a typical meeting day.
Wednesday,
August 20th, and you could come at like 2 o'clock.
So
I can do August 20th.
That would actually work better.
Okay. And some of you are away for the first 2 weeks, and I know the administrators are not available the first week of August. And then you said, Jill, you're away the second week of August?
I am too.
Yep.
Okay, so that would work.
So should we leave the 20th on our schedules?
Yeah, definitely keep August 20th.
So
Okay.
like 2 to 6, is that the timing?
I'd say 5, 2 to
2
5.
to 5?
I mean, we could go a
Somebody's
little
gonna tell
earlier.
Mark?
I'm
Andy?
sorry.
Can you tell Mark?
August 20th? Okay, oh, I'm sorry, I can't even,
Can you tell Mark?
Yeah,
So you were in
that's fine.
communication.
yeah.
Why don't we start at 1 o'clock?
Now we're 1 on the 20th?
Yeah.
1 o'clock. Until when now?
I'm like, wait, did you
5?
do 1 to 5?
We've
What's
gained
the
an
break?
hour.
That's facts.
So you want 1 to 5?
Well, let's say 1 o'clock, and I'll try to
Yeah.
figure out how long it goes.
We'll see how long we can stay
Exactly.
alert.
I like the
Well, you're going to be getting ready to crank everything up for another year, so.
Yeah. So it'd be really good if we could get another date in July.
Can we do the first,
For
the second
what?
week?
It
of
sounded
Day?
like the 14th, maybe?
A day or an evening? Are we looking at?
Probably a day, during the day.
And what are we going to do?
Oh, but you said Mark you think is away.
For what is this?
Typically, we need 2
Monthly
sessions.
meeting, yeah.
So like the goal setting one and two?
Part A.
Okay.
Part B.
Well, the first 12 days, the first 2 weeks of July are wide open for me, and we could just.
I'm not open?
Are, yeah.
What's the 9th look like for people?
It's a
I
Wednesday.
can't do the 9th.
Of July.
I could do, yeah, week 7, 10, or 11, but not the 8th or the 9th.
I'm okay any of those.
The previous week's 4th of July, well, leading up to 4th of July.
Yes, let's not do that.
So we're saying July starting the 7th. Who can do something the 7th?
I can.
I can.
Yes.
I cannot.
Who
I
can?
would be able to, it's right after a holiday.
Okay. The 8th?
People buy food.
Yeah.
8th?
I'm away till the
That whole-
14th, I'm back.
Okay. Well, why don't we tentatively look at the 14th and we'll see what Mark can do.
So again, are we talking about 2 to 5? 1 to 5?
And the last 2, I know we haven't talked about the last 2 weeks of July at all, have we? In terms of-
Yeah, I'm away the last week and somebody else is away the week before.
We can't start in the morning.
Yeah, I was going to say the first one would start at 10 o'clock. 10 to 2.
The 14th one?
Yeah.
Couldn't do like 8 to 12?
No.
In the summer?
And that's at central office.
Yeah, let's.
Who's got air conditioning?
Central office.
I put the other one at BES, is that not
We'll get the locations out to people.
Yeah.
I just have to confirm that we can do this. Okay. So right as of now, July 14th, 10 a.m.
Yep.
And August 20th, 1 p.m. And we'll adjust as we need to.
So do we have any meetings in July beyond that? Then we don't have any evening meetings, right? And we don't have any other evening meetings in August.
No, just those 2.
So you need to update the website then with those, because that's not
So
on.
any ancillary business that comes over in those months, we will handle on the 2 DBA, 2 meeting days.
Are we at the point where we need to do the blanket vote in order for them to?
Probably next meeting.
Okay, so that takes us down to service contract?
Oh, yeah, I didn't know what to do. So cafe services, this is your contract to continue. Did you guys have discussion about this? Okay, so this is just the annual renewal.
Annual renewal, what, do we need to vote on this?
Yep.
Annual renewal, because last year we went
It's
through
a-
an
it's-
entire.
It's a 3-year or a 5-year, but it's always annual renewal.
Yeah.
So did you hear that?
So the fact that you did not go out to bid this year, you're sticking with cafe services.
Because we annually approve it again, even though we put it out to bid every
3 to 5 years. I think you have a 5-year contract.
Okay, so what are these tabs for? Is this something I should be reading out
I
loud?
think
or-
it's supposed to be longer this time too. Before we do that.
What? No, don't read those tabs.
Okay, so we need a motion
To approve the annual food service contract with the
renewal with
cafe service.
cafe service.
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
David?
Kim got it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, what does it say here, possible price increase? What did we, wait a minute. Hold on.
Too late?
Too late now, we just did it.
Just approved.
Price of
Can you
corn
ask
is
us
going up.
What is this possible price
I
increase?
don't know what that is.
Well, the cost of bacon's going
Okay,
up.
so it's not allowed.
Cost of everything,
Everything's
not
going
just bacon's going up.
The very last page has a schedule of payments.
Jim factored in any sort of increase in your subsidy. Yeah.
Proposed price list. Full price is $2.35, adult is $3.50, breakfast is $1.50, and $2.25 for an adult. Milk is 65 cents. The dairy farmers are apparently not going up.
How come the price of cheese went up?
increased supply with grass.
Increase supply of grass.
So again, you have money in your budget to support any sort of minor increase that would represent.
Yeah, that's true, it could be, yeah. Now they-
So Joe, I would encourage as board chair that at 7:15 you not go backwards on the agenda. You should move forward with the agenda.
Well, I'm just saying, if it's possible, price. I don't think there's anything left except for the action plans and the agenda review.
It'll be about an hour and a half.
Well, the action plans are gonna have to obviously move forward.
Yeah.
So there we are, that's for the agenda review. Action plans for next time, anything else for next time?
Well, the whole policy council,
yeah.
and that really is the
That's
focus
the
of the meeting.
There's just a test out there.
Could we pass them out so people could review?
And you have contracts to pass to us too?
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you, as long as you promise to keep them, some keep them in your binder. It's some information that I think is really important in terms of the whole change from action planning to continuous school improvement to another element of that the Agency of Education is supporting, which I think is great, a balanced accountability model. And Lyle and I just put together a few slides from a PowerPoint that all of the administrators were present at when the AOE representative reviewed this with us, as well as other district, outside of our district administrators were part of that. And I think it's really important to see the components of, rather than just standardized testing, all of the differentiated assessments that we actually support. And I know the Secretary of Education, Rebecca Holcomb, when she was down here at the state board meeting 2 weeks ago, actually credited our district with a lot of the things that they're, when you go to this slide, thinking about all the different performance standards, assessments, standardized tests, surveys, standard-based evaluations. These are things that we've been implementing, so she really appreciated that. One, that we hosted the meeting and we support the concept, and two, that we're actually doing the work. So I thought that was good.
Did she talk about, in that first performance, it was about using some of our locally developed assessments statewide, because this talks about common scoring protocols. Or are they going to develop a whole, is this like future?
It's future, yeah. I mean, it's a lot of work.
Clearly.
There's task force that are being established for all of those areas. I know I just got a request from the Superintendent's Association about being on a task force for the principal and superintendent evaluation and the process for that. She wants to see our climate survey because she knows that we have a very comprehensive climate survey that she'd like them to kind of consider replicating. So, we'll have more on this, but I just wanted to give you this as a kind of a lead-in. Any of the other material I'm going to hold off on because I'd rather do it when we are all together. The schools have their own action plan / Green Mountain Star plan. It'd be good to distribute those. But again, hang on to them so we
So they
have
should
them.
email them to us via,
No, they have them right here to give you.
oh. So don't pass
See,
them
we
out.
were planning on this at 6:30. No, I would ask them to pass those out, and you just hang on to them.
You should write
I mean,
down
you hang on to them,
6:30
not them.
hours.
And I'm going to do that next time.
Meeting runs long, you end up with homework. That's
This is school after all.
I don't know, so we spent a lot of time worrying about kids crossing the street safely. I think it was a fair
That's good.
thing to worry about.
And good food, nutritious food.
But more time worrying about
It says Green Street.
Ryan, I think this may be yours, it's got paper.
You don't get one, buddy.
Mine's got a paper clip on it.
Oh, yeah, that's
Mine is stapled.
It was.
So
There should be one for each school.
that's yours.
Oh, okay.
And you can look at that and says Green Street, that one.
Well, I've got one.
Oh, I've got.
Yeah, it should be
Green
three.
Mountain Star, got it. Here.
So you got Green Street, Oak Grove, Academy, and there's one missing for Green Street. Anybody have a Green Street?
I have one.
I've got Oak Groves here.
I got Academy and Oak Grove,
And Green Street.
and now I have Green Street.
And what else?
Did you get enough, Roger?
just giving me a comment.
It's a trick table.
So that's it for action planning tonight.
Okay, I have a question.
Do a little studying and we'll do more.
I make an inquiry of our superintendent. I have heard that among the concerns of the new Common Core, apparently seem to have some problems with certified Common Core textbooks. Are we bumping into anything like that?
We have, our advice has been, do not purchase new materials yet.
Okay, so would that also apply to the, I wanted to ask the question earlier, data collection software for the hardware that we have that's impinging upon Common Core?
We're looking at, we use the Ames Web system
Yeah.
and we use Excel. So we've been using Bryn Tucker as our data person, and she's amazing with Excel. That won't change. Ames Web is changing. We have decided not to do that in the upcoming year. We're going to put that off for a year also.
Stay with the original.
Stay
So
with the
there's,
original.
yeah, so there's, will there be any ramifications if we decide to proceed till apprehended with our best practices?
No.
Okay.
Is there an option, if this continues to be a problem, to just opt out of the test the first year?
I don't think we would opt out of the test, no. And part of what will happen in grade level meetings in the fall will be reviewing the practice tests. And more, Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium has put together better and better practice tests for teachers to use.
There also, when it first began, there was, I think, Kansas comes to mind as one of the states that had a huge array of things already in place. It seemed like there'd be no reason to spend money at all.
No,
Well,
exactly.
the thing is, if you have a new program like this, and it's been reported, that anybody who's got a printing press is trying to turn out something.
Yes, they
Or
are.
little gold sticker says Common
These
Core.
are those stickers, this is certified, organic certified.
Yes.
We're really conscious of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We, the good thing from the Agency of Education, along with this balanced assessment model, because they recognize that we don't want to hang everything on these standardized test results, nor have we, is the concept of the multi-tiered system of support that is tied into Green Mountain Star, and also the SWIFT project that we have adopted throughout the SU. Not every school, but really the principles that we use in all the schools we are using. So remember what I said to you a while back, and I'll be saying it again in the spring, next spring, that when your schools get low scores on the Common Core, do not listen to anything about failing schools. Because as Lyle and I went to the agency last year when they asked us to be on a task force, the question was, should we still maintain doing the NAEP assessment, the National Education Assessment Program that assesses all states. And Vermont is always in the top tier of that assessment. Next spring will be even more critical when you hear about all sorts of states and all sorts of districts having a problem with the transition to the Common Core, that our NAEP scores nationally will still be as high as they always have been. So don't get hung up on the Common Core first year.
One other thing along those lines, I just happened to hear this on the interview with this guy this morning. The guy, he wrote a book called I've been schooled, I can't remember what it was, but he disaggregated, he was looking at national scores, test scores, achievement scores, and he disaggregated urban school districts. And if you do that, the scores for all the other schools are, compared to every other country in the world, we're way above them, including Finland, which is always presented. And the reason is because obviously those are the schools that they're underrepresented, they have the poorest teachers, they have the fewest resources, and the greatest need. But if you disaggregate those scores, our schools are fantastic. Our problem continues to be race.
What?
Race and urban communities and poverty.
Yeah.
That's really the problem with education. It's not our schools. And I found that very enlightening.
Sorry about disturbing your pile of cell phone.
Okay, so bringing us back to the agenda here that was on. I think the only thing left at this point is an agenda review for next meeting. There's an other, unless people had under other. Okay, good. So I have down action plans, policy council meeting. in general, just that half of the meeting, the way Policy Council is planning on it, is the first half of the meeting would be run by Policy Council, it'll be their meeting for about an hour, and then it would switch to our meeting and they would just stay and be a part of that. And then I put down as well an update on Western Avenue Academy School Safety. I think we should just continue to put that on until we find out what we can do and get something done.
Can you come out, talk to the chair of that committee and make sure that
Yeah,
they're
there's
coming? Yeah, you usually do. Yeah.
everybody, and there is food at the EES.
Yeah.
Jill,
It's a supper.
I would expect that the Energy Subcommittee will have a report by next meeting.
Yeah, something.
Stephen Mark.
Is there anything else, or shall I entertain a motion to adjourn?
Is it Gordon?
Yeah.
And a second? All approved?
Aye.
There we are.
Aye.
7:25.